Thank you very much, Patrick. Yeah, as Henri said, I'm also one of the partners at the Conscious Fund. A privilege and honor to welcome you all to the October edition of Psychedelic Capital. What a month it's been, Henri. I mean, a little bit of kind of self-bragging. You know, two of our portfolio companies have made incredible strides. Cybin, you know, raising the largest amount of money that a Canadian company has managed to do so far. A fantastic new CEO there in the seat, and Numinous rallying in the stock market, and of course making a very important announcement to the market, and a seismic step in the right direction of psychedelic medicine being more accessible and available to people.
Yes, I think it's been Canada's turn to strike back after Compass dominated the headlines. I think what Cybin have done, it did take them a lot of work. I wouldn't for a minute want to suggest that they breezed through it, but to produce that level of funding in a market that's often derided as a kind of penny stock market is very impressive, and I think it shows how serious the next generation of companies are, and that money goes a long way towards fulfilling Cybin's clinical ambitions. They've always been a very aggressive company, they've always been very efficient, very smart, and I think this proves it, and it bodes well for the other serious Canadian entities that are raising at the moment. And just to touch on Numinous, one of the very earliest players for which they should be commended. I think they struggled with rules around disclosure and keeping quiet and doing stuff during fundraising, and that prevented them going out into the market. But now that they are back, with what are quite seismic announcements, I think that one is on a very sharp upward trajectory.
Which leads very nicely to some of the amazing companies that we have speaking this evening. Numinous, we're really pleased to announce will be joining us. Payson Nyquist will be talking in broader terms about what they're doing at Team Numinous. We also have Magical Brands going to be joining us, and Universal Ibogaine, our three sponsor speakers, sharing with the audience tonight. And it is tonight for me. I mean, it's the afternoon, I think, for most people, but it's 9:34 here in Malta at the moment, so it's going to be a late PsyCap for us, and two fantastic panels as well. So last PsyCap, the panel which Henri hosted, was extremely well received, which was talking about the last mile and clinics. So we're going to go a little bit more niche on the next one, this PsyCap, and talk about addiction and addiction recovery, and some of the leading clinic operators are joining us to talk about that on one of our panels. And also proud to welcome a number of venture capital funds who we regularly work alongside, we invest alongside, will be joining us to talk about due diligence, along with a number of folks from the broader investment community and the legal community. We'll be talking about what it takes to be a good investor, not just following market trends, but also what sort of things should you be looking at if you're looking at putting money into the market. What sort of due diligence, what sort of questions should you be asking before you wire that next hot psychedelic medicine company your hard-earned money? So those are the two panels that we're going to be doing tonight at PsyCap, and three great investor presentations as well. Don't forget, if you want to pose a question to any of the panelists, we do have Q&A both for the investor presentations and for the panels, and you can do that by going onto the platform and setting up a question, and if it's voted up, then your question will be posed to the panelists. So that is the best way if you want to have a chat with any of our panelists who are speaking this evening. Of course, we are super active on Twitter as well. we are using the hashtag PsyCap, PSY cap, as our hashtag. If you want to join in the conversation on Twitter, then the hashtag is PsyCap. And of course, if you're not following us on Twitter yet, why? It is MicroDose HQ, at MicroDose HQ. I think that's about it from myself and Henri. Unless you've got anything else to say? Usually have.
I've got plenty, but I'm going to save it for the panel and hand over to the first of our company presentations to give them as much time as possible.
Thank you very much. Patrick, take it away.
Hey guys, sorry about that. I was just on the other line. We're getting them prepared and ready to go. So I just wanted to give them another couple minutes. We're scheduled to start their presentation at 4:45 there. So maybe we could,
sure.
I think that the audience wouldn't mind hearing maybe an update from your end as the Conscious Fund. What's been happening lately? Maybe any market updates you can share or activity on some of your incubated projects, any of that can be released.
We're probably a bit too discreet to blow our own trumpet, but we have got several projects coming to market. One is around real world evidence, and we also have a major AI-based project, which is very much off the radar at the moment. So some of what we've been doing as a fund is looking at the evolution of early stage companies and going beyond what has currently been dominated by clinic plays and straight drug discovery plays. So as the market matures, things start to get more sophisticated. We've adapted our approach on incubation to look at these sort of new takes on existing business models that have been adapted for psychedelics. The market is definitely undergoing a sort of second twist, I suppose. A lot more money is flowing in, so you'll see big increases like Cybin in the slightly more mature companies. And at the seed and pre-seed stage, I think what you're seeing is entrepreneurs being very creative and trying to look at ways of differentiating themselves. You'll also see, I think, an increasing number of ancillary businesses like AI and other systems that are part of what is becoming a psychedelic kind of ecosystem, in much the same way as you saw in cannabis. It's just these will be, I think, an order of magnitude more sophisticated. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Richard.
Yeah, no, I think a regular conversation we have with entrepreneurs and our investors is, where we kind of feel psychedelic medicine is in its life cycle. For me, every day is day zero, because we continue to be outstanding by the level of sort of innovation which is happening and the new scientific discovery. So there's been, those early companies who came to market, kind of wallpapering of patents, which has taken place, and some will prove, I think, to be exceptionally valuable, and some will prove to not be so valuable. And that was kind of, I think, sort of the very sort of early strategy for these companies. But now we're starting to see, real strides in terms of, the use of technology, people, looking at alternative ways of getting, medicines into the market, whether that's jurisdiction arbitrage, whether that's using different sort of regulatory methods. So those kind of things I think are super interesting. But yeah, it's day zero every day in this space. And, once you connect yourself to the psychedelics fire hose, there is no turning it off. That's for sure. Yes,
that's true. And I think one thing that we're also seeing is the early psychedelic companies were 100% patient focused, and long term, their revenues, that for revenue generation, they were looking towards patients. the sector is growing so quickly now that there are starting to become companies whose target for revenue is the sector itself. So companies that assist drug discovery companies, companies that help clinic chains to scale, technology platforms to make things easier within the industry. It really is becoming an ecosystem and a target itself for revenue generation, which I think gives everybody an idea of just how far this market's come in the last 9 to 12 months. It's taken on a life of its own.
And indeed, and you're seeing top tier investors going into this space. Y Combinator supported one of our portfolio companies, Gilgamesh, and that for them as a company really changed the gears in terms of the type of investors who are starting to look at this space, which is fantastic. And we're seeing really high quality law firms set up dedicated psychedelic divisions. We've got Zuber Lawler, who of course have been one of the most successful legal firms in operating in the business of cannabis, now giving focus to psychedelics, but joined by BDO later on in this event. And I've had the pleasure of speaking with Michael, who leads their M&A team there, and he's really, really passionate about the importance of psychedelic medicine. And I think that's the really, really good reassuring thing that yes, there are more and more sort of entrants who are coming into this space, but they're driven by a really good intention, and these are people who've wanted to operate in this space for many, many years, but couldn't necessarily get their company comfortable with it, or there wasn't an addressable market. And then the same for a lot of the scientists who have spent 20, 30 years working for big pharma and have always wanted to set up a psychedelic startup, but of course this wasn't going to be achievable. So we're seeing an incredible amount of talent which is flowing into the psychedelic medicine space right now.
Yes, in fact, one of our favourite scientists still uses an alias because of the previous stigma around psychedelics, and is only just beginning to kind of lift the veil on his identity. And I think that goes for a lot of people that have always had an interest in psychedelics or a personal story. The market, the destigmatization is now there to allow them to operate very openly and bring to fruition the dream projects that they may have had for decades in some cases.
Yeah. No,
so the flow of people is very impressive.
I had a fantastic moment this week, actually. I was invited to speak at a venture capital conference talking about the importance of investing into minorities who tend to struggle to access venture capital. And one of the things we're very proud of at the Conscious Fund is that we've got a near 50-50 mix of female founding teams. And he said, that's fantastic. He said, that's out of kilter. I said to him, I'm not too sure if you've actually looked at what we invest into before you invite me to your conference. I said, might be a little bit too funky. And he said, no, I haven't actually. He said, what is it? And I said, psychedelic medicine. And he said, I'm a seed investor into Compass Pathways. I was like, okay, I don't need to convince you. But I was approached as a VC to talk about, as a VC, but there are some really good allies who've been in this space for quite some time, which is really reassuring. Hopefully, we've filled this moment in time, and Patrick is back behind the magic curtain and ready to welcome our first speakers.
Richard, we never lost the magic. It's always been there. You just have to work for it.
Indeed.